winging an interview is your best way into the no pile.
Welcome to the Career Q Snap. So on today's show, we have Dana Manciagli. Hi, Dana. So great to have you here. Dana is the president of DanaManciagli.com. So, Dana, you are Dana Manciagli. I love that. So we're actually going to talk to you. We've actually got a second interview that we're going to be doing with you, and we're actually we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But for today's episode, we're actually going to take, and we just talked about this in kind of pre-interview, is we're going to take people through the kind of workflow of job search and landing a job and stuff like that to about 3/4 of the way. Gone through the search, got submitted resumes, gotten through the black hole, all those kinds of things. But now you get a phone interview. Let's talk about acing the interviews. And we're actually talking about a couple of different stages of the interview process, right? Because typically nowadays you do a phone interview or a phone screen. And then if you ace that, you go through that gate and then get to the face-to-face. So do people do phone interviews really well?
Oh, most candidates don't.
Okay.
And they fall into the same trap, Stacey, as calling them a phone screen, when in fact they are interviews. It doesn't matter if it's with a 24-year-old recruiter on the phone who doesn't know much about the job. But if you don't pass their phone interview and take it as seriously as a phone interview, you won't make it to the next level, which is the face-to-face.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, let's go even before the phone interview. If you're meeting somebody in a Starbucks, you're networking, treat that as an interview. So all of job search, whether it's for an internal job or an external job, is to perform every time you're in front of somebody who can influence your next move.
So treating every interaction like it's an interview. Oh, I love that. All right, that's tweetable right there. That's a quote right there. Okay. Okay, so you are invited to do a phone interview. What's the best way to approach it? How do you prepare for it? Because one of the barriers is that you don't get that face-to-face interaction. Right. Well, when we can touch on the future, right? Because it's going to go video and we're all going to be no more phone. But what are some of the tips that you give people in preparing for that interview, for that phone interview?
You bet. And the good news about phone interviews, I always start with the positive, is you get to cheat on phone interviews. Why? They can't see you either. Yeah. So guess what? You're at a great table. You're prepared. You have printed, old school, I get it. You have printed their job description, your documents, your resume, your answers to questions. There is no reason anybody should bomb a phone interview when they say, tell me about your strengths. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your weaknesses. Why do you want this job? You should sound scripted because guess what? You are. Yeah. And it's spread out right in front of you.
So doing homework.
Doing all the prep.
The prep. To go in, yeah.
Yes. And I'm hoping it's the same amount of prep someone would do if they're going in for a face-to-face. Again, don't underestimate that phone. Don't wing it. Yeah. So one of my top mantras is winging an interview is your best way into the no pile. Oh. So anyone who feels, hey, I hear it all the time from my clients as a job search coach is, oh, I'm great at interviews. Oh, that makes me so nervous. I want to take out the Men in Black neuralizer and erase their brain because I want them to be hungry and feel they need to prepare. No matter how great they think they do, they're winging it. So that's step one is I love phone interviews. I get to cheat.
I love that.
So there's one.
To be able to have it in front of you. It's like if you got an open book exam that you get to do.
Yes.
I love that. Okay, great.
Second one. Stand up if you can. Find a counter, borrow someone's quiet home, stand up because when we all speak from the diaphragm, right, projecting. So also get a headset while you're standing up. So use your hands. If you use your hands when you give a presentation, and no one can see me now, but I'm using my hands, and you can hear it in my voice. Yeah. So that's one thing to do on a phone interview. Stand up, project to the back of the room as if you're giving a presentation.
That's great. Because not many people think about that. They probably hunched over a desk. It's probably not clear, right? Clutter-free. So setting yourself up in the best environment possible as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, number 3.
Number 3, have great questions to ask. Most people, if they prepare questions to ask, they're preparing them for the face-to-face interview, forgetting all about it in a phone quote, screen.
Right.
It's not a screen. It's an interview. So even for a recruiter who's giving you that first interview, have great questions for them, which means they're a different kind of question. It's not the type of question that goes deep into the actual job. You save those for the hiring manager, but they can tell you more about the culture of the company. You can boast about, hey, I'm really strong in analytics. Do you think that's going to be an asset for this job? Of course it is, because it's on the job description.
Right.
Which leads to the next thing to do. Study and dissect their job description. Try to avoid the use of the words I, me, and my, and use more of, your position is looking for this. Your company needs this. This job needs me to speak Swahili. And did you know I speak that for 5 years? I have spoken it for 5 years. So it's so important that people make themselves relevant to the job. More so for the recruiter, because their job, they are just looking at the job description, and they're trying to pull out of you in 30 minutes and assess if you're a fit for just that job. So they don't need to hear all this other fluffy stuff. In my book, Cut the Crap, Get a Job, I call it the deck-a-card syndrome, which is the old way we were taught, is just toss out a bunch of things you've done over the last 20 years and hope that something lands.
Right.
Never does.
No.
Confuses them. Picture the other person on the phone is my last input on phone interviews, is if you were on the receiving side, you're taking notes or typing into your laptop. If the person you're listening to is rambling on and on, you don't know when they're stopping, starting, you check out. They can't keep up.
Yep.
So clearly being concise. And so it's the law of threes. If the recruiter or anybody on a phone interview, this will be the same for face-to-face, says, why should we hire you? Your answer is, well, there are 3 main reasons you should hire me. 1, blah, blah, blah. 2, say the word to, blah, blah, blah. And finally, because I speak Swahili.
Right.
And then zip it.
Yeah. Done. Put a pin in it. You've said what you said you said what you were going to say. I love that. Oh gosh. So those are tips that you mentioned that you can apply them to the face-to-face, right?
Oh, yes.
So you've done your homework, you've prepped, and you may actually find that if you had some questions that you didn't get a chance to ask as a part of the phone interview because it was going so great and the recruiter was super engaged, you can then actually transfer those to the face-to-face. If it's appropriate.
Yes.
Right?
Oh,
so
you repurpose those great questions over and over again,
Yeah.
even in a face-to-face where you have 3 people in a row. You can repeat the same questions and see what different answers you get from different people.
Okay. So we're talking about, a phone interview is typically 30 minutes, right? And that can be somewhat of a little bit of pressure for some people, like how do I get my story across or at least show the value that I could bring to the table in a short period of time, right? How do you take your career, your 20-year career or 10-year career and apply that to 30 minutes? And that's where that being concise comes in.
Yes.
And then you nail the phone interview and they invite you into the face-to-face. That prep doesn't go away. That homework does not go away. And setting yourself up so you're going in and you know exactly what your story is, what your message is going to be. What else? So what are the tips that you give your clients on actually turning up on the day, especially if they're actually going to be talking to multiple people during the day too?
Yes,
Yeah.
and usually they are. Well, first, hopefully you've taken notes also from that phone interview because you'll get some nuggets in there that are going to be very helpful, especially if you asked great questions like, hey, Miss Recruiter, what are the top 3 skills that the hiring manager is looking for? See if you can draw some juicy bits out of them. You've now taken notes because they can't see you, right? You're on the phone. So study those and bring them forward, naturally doing more research. Now it's day of interview. Actually, let's rewind to the day before. If you don't know where you're going exactly, like what building on a campus, drive there the day before, find the building, where will I park, where's the nearest Starbucks, just in case I'm there, hopefully an hour early.
Right.
So that's the tricks to pre-day.
Yeah.
So you don't get stressed out and lost and never be late.
Right. Right.
My rule of thumb is if you're not in their lobby 30 minutes in advance of your first interview, you are late. So target 30 minutes before.
Okay.
You don't call. You ask the receptionist, please don't call them yet. I'm
Right.
just going to wait.
Yeah.
Okay. So now it's day of. First, you want to bring the right things. You want to also leave behind the wrong things. So you don't want to be overloaded. You need your hands free to shake, right? So what are you going to have with you? You must have a portfolio with a pad. This is old school, but it's so important. Leave the coat in the car, your phone in the car, all toys, gadgets, everything. In your briefcase will be a bottle of water, a snack. They don't always feed you, so take care of your health. Take care of how you're going to perform.
Yes.
Again, everything's a performance.
Yeah.
You're on stage. Okay, so now you're prepared. You've got your hands free, and you've got copies of your resume and their job description. You sit down and you make eye contact. Then it's all about nonverbal too. Remember, everybody's watching you. From the minute you walk in, the good, strong handshake, eye contact, smile. Hiring managers want to hire happy people. And they're watching you how good of a fit you're going to be for their team.
So I'll actually talk about the snack again. I it's really driving home that point of, like, could you imagine being dehydrated and, like, being hangry? Like, I'm sure you see that all the time with clients, right? They probably come to you and be like, oh, I fell apart. So I love what you said, Dana, about the water and the snack. It seems so simple, but it's really important to fuel your body, to be able to fuel your mind, to stay engaged and not fizzle out halfway through. Yeah.
And it's about taking accountability for communicating to them when you need a break. They will sometimes run you meeting to meeting to meeting. We've been guilty of that. I'm ex-Microsoft. And, hey, you got the next one. And it's up to the candidate and feel comfortable being a human and saying, can I take 5? Now, my tips, when I was on interviews, I would take a briefcase with me, everything with me, and I would, even in the ladies' room, have to guzzle a glass of water and eat a little snack. I mean, you've got to fuel yourself and be sure that you come out of there ready to perform again.
Yeah, that's great.
Say and do what you need to be able to have the wherewithal to keep your energy up all day long.
I love that. So going into the interview, you're hydrated, you're snacked up, you're ready to go. I've experienced this myself where you walk into an interview and then all of a sudden they ask you a question and you feel like you're super prepped, and then there's something that you didn't think of and you're like blank. You're like tunnel vision, like, oh my gosh, at this point I can't even remember my name. Like, how do you recover from that? Yeah.
So this is the trick with preparing on how to interview. Most people prepare to interview the night before or 2 nights before, trying to cram all that information in their brain. If you really study interviewing well in advance, and in my coaching and my book, it's way early. It's right up with doing your resume. Let's get interview ready. So because you want the problem that when you apply, you get the phone call the next day, and then you say, oh, blank, I'm not ready yet, right? You want to be ready.
Right.
So the trick is learning the framework of how to answer any question. So when you go into an interview, you're confident, hey, bring it on. You throw me those crazy questions like, why are manhole covers round? And what would you do if? And which board game do you prefer, Scrabble or Monopoly?
Sure.
You know, those are still being tossed out there. But same with just any question. So some keys are, first, trust the law of threes, that even if you're making it up on the fly, you'll say 3 things and you'll stop talking. So right now you could throw me any question and I would toss back to you without ever hearing it before, because I'm going to create the first three things, I'm not going to second guess myself, that come to my mind, and then I'm going to zip it. So law of threes is really comforting. The other trick is many are situational questions. Tell me a time when. Now, gone are the days of the hypothetical ones.
Right.
Hey, there's this problem. What would you do?
Right.
No. They want to know from the job description that you have proof points, that you've done it. So tell me a time when you've had a complex employee, a hard to work with employee, and you had to have that hard conversation. You weren't prepared for that question, right? But SAR is your secret bullet. SAR. So and it stands for situation, action, and result. I just cut it down. So if you ask me that question on the fly, I would think of a person who was difficult. I'd say, yes, I did have that situation 3 years ago, and it was a person who wasn't getting along with the team. The actions I took, I just did S. The actions I took were I had several meetings with the person, then I started documenting, and then I put them on a personal improvement program, all I. And then as a result, the R of SAR, as a result, the person actually did a lot of coaching and made a dramatic improvement and is still on the team. That's it.
Great.
So with SAR, now I have my law of threes. Now I have my SAR. I know I can answer that. And there are a few other framework tricks, but you can't prepare for every question.
Right.
So the key is having a framework to rest on.
Yeah. Oh, well, and to know that you can actually go back to that at any given point. And there's got to be some level of comfort in knowing that you can always go back to that, right? And instead of trying to scramble. Yeah. That also shows that you're prepared to be able to have that conversation. Yeah. And not afraid of it either.
Right.
Right.
And not being afraid of saying to the interviewer, can you repeat that question or rephrase it? I want to be sure I answer it right. So we do block out. We're nervous. We're sweating. We're thinking about the kids and did I feed the dog? And oh no. And so, yes, if you go completely blank, you've got your pad of paper out, you've got your pen, you're taking notes, and you're listening intently, but you didn't get it. So if you're not positive on the question they ask, feel free to say, can you repeat that and rephrase it slightly so I just
I love that.
Sure that I know what you're asking.
Yeah. Okay.
And it buys you some time to check back in.
So you go through your day of interviews and you're actually learning more about the job too, because you're also evaluating whether you want to be a part of that team. So it's often that people think that it's a one-way street, like that you're trying to be, they're interviewing you for the job, but ultimately you're also interviewing them as an employer as well.
Yes, but I'm going to burst that bubble.
Oh, okay.
Right here and there.
Okay.
If you get as far as an interview, remember, you don't want to blow this. You want to get the offer.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to go for the offer.
Yeah.
So the big error is that candidates do too much of that. And their questions are filled with, well, what's your management style? What's the culture? What about this? How much time am I going to spend here and there? And they come across as high maintenance or needing training. So what you want to do is really focus on what they want to get out of the interview. You want to get the offer. Guess what? You now have a choice. Now you do your research. And you can talk to that hiring manager all you want after you got an offer. Say, you know what? I'd like another hour to really probe on some things that are on my mind.
Yeah, that's
Get
right.
that offer.
Yeah.
The danger is if you ask too many questions like that, probing, you could throw yourself under the bus right there and get into the no pile. The other good news is there are sites like Glassdoor.com. For everyone, Glassdoor has 3 sections, and some people don't know about all 3. One is a job board. One is a salary indicator. You can look up salaries. And the third one is the Yelp of companies. So that teaches you a lot about culture and management style. But you really don't want to dig for reasons why you wouldn't find the job in an interview. Those precious moments are for you to sell yourself. Always, always selling and giving and being interested. Don't try to be so interesting. Try to be really interested in a positive way.
So there's a very distinct distinct difference between the two. Interested versus interesting.
Yes.
Okay, so let's you get to the end of the interview day. You've given it everything that you've got. You've been fully prepared. You've nailed it. You've aced all the interview questions. Follow up. This is a tough one for people. Like, what's the right thing to do?
Yes. Stacey, before we get to follow-up, I'd love to just add a few nuggets on the interviews. First, after every interview, this is part of follow-up, after every interview, every hour or 30 minutes, ask for the job. Go for the close. They're looking for that, and you want to express interest, even if they're standing up. Sorry, we've got to go. We're out of time. Hey, by the way, Mr. Interviewer, I just want to tell you I'm extremely passionate about your position, and I hope I get to go to the next level of the process.
That's great.
Say that at the end of every one.
Yeah.
Secondly, don't forget to have those great questions written out beforehand, because they will ask you, do you have some questions? And it looks so good when you say, yes, I do, and you bring out that piece of paper from your folio that you prepped just for that interview, and you take notes out of courtesy.
Yeah.
Don't ever go in empty-handed.
Right.
You also want to get their business card. I've had too many clients, Stacey, where I've said, did you follow up? Oh, I don't have their email address. Well, okay, so get everybody's contact information.
Yeah.
Now you're ready to follow up. Naturally, first follow-up is an email within 12 hours, ideally 4, 8, but not from a phone. I don't want phone devices to be used for any contact. You'll have typos with your thumbs, no great signature. They just don't look professional. Yep. So I always would love someone to go back to their laptop and type out a really nice email.
Okay.
Separate emails to each person you met. No more batch thank you notes. Hey, John, Sally, Joe, and Mary, thank you so much for your time. No, you write individual ones, because from the notes you took in each interview, you're going to draw out something they said. Hey, I recall from our conversation that you think the analytical skills are the most important thing. That's great. That's my passion, blah, blah, blah. So really important to customize those thank you notes. Why email? And of course, I love handwritten notes. They can follow. But an email is fast, because you never know when that interview team is going to huddle and talk about you. And you want to have your thank you note in their inbox to differentiate you from someone who didn't. It is fine to write the separate thank you note if you want. It's not needed. It's a nice touch. No longer needed.
Okay.
Then you follow up 7 days later, 3 times. So if interviews on Tuesday, guess what? The following Tuesday, if you haven't heard from them, hey, you send a nice follow-up email. I really enjoyed our conversation. I remember we talked about puppies. And by the way, I want to share more about my analytical skills. So make it robust about add value. And then if you don't hear from them, 7 days again.
Okay.
And then 3 times. Be persistent. I can't tell you how many times I've heard, but Dana, that makes me so uncomfortable. I don't want to be a pest.
Right.
Oh, I wish people erred on the side of being a pest.
Oh, yeah.
I want to say be a pest, because you're not. I mean, they're just not following up. So it's so key to say, no, you're not being a pest. You're doing it elegantly. They're professional. Often you'll get a response, and it just differentiates you from everybody else.
And do you include the recruiter in there too?
Always. So I love the partnership of, once you have the recruiter's name, if there is one, sometimes there isn't, but a recruiter and a hiring manager, put both on the 2 line.
Okay.
Keep it very transparent. Don't just communicate to the hiring manager and leave the recruiter out. You want to treasure that partnership and treat both with equal respect.
I like that. That's great. So, Dana, what I'm surmising from what you're saying is that you're actually coaching people to stand out, to be the different type of candidate, right? The candidate that comes in prepared, the candidate that proves that this is an important interview, and they've aligned or allowed the time to be able to be present and be engaged, and to prove that they're actually wanting this job more than the next candidate that they're going to see. So, and that's not only in the preparation, but also in the follow-up as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How do you stand out from the other candidates? Because it is such a competitive environment,
Hugely.
right? How do you make sure you stand out for all the right reasons?
Yes.
Yeah.
And while there are more jobs available now, it's still hugely competitive, as you said. Now, we want everyone to stand out in a very professional, job seeker way. We don't mean personal branding, stand out with being flamboyant, dressing differently. That is not the time. It's actually the opposite, where you want to stand out with a brand. You want to stand out as their future employee. Here's the trick to think about interviews. They're watching you as if you were an employee. They're thinking, well, if they were late to the interview, they're going to be late to my key meeting. If they can't communicate with eye contact, then they won't have eye contact with my customers. If they can't articulate 3 things and stop talking, or if they babble on, that's the way they'll be in a meeting. So everything you do is an example or a sample of how you'll be. And that's the same with follow-up. If you're in a biz dev role or even finance, any kind of capacity, they would want you to be that persistent.
Yeah.
Those are positive characteristics. They want to see samples of your emails, how well you write. So really flaunt your skills is how we want people to stand out. Flaunt your business skills.
I love that. Another tweetable comment. I love that. Okay. So we've done the follow-up, and you're going to get the good news. So we're actually going to bring you back in and do our next episode on so you get the job offer. Now what do you do, right? So we're talking with Dana Manciagli today about, acing those interview questions and getting prepped just to be able to nail the interview process. Thank you so much, Dana, for coming in. Before we go, you actually offer some online courses for your clients. So where can people find out a little bit more about that?
Well, I have so many resources for everybody listening to your podcast, whether it's free advice on my blogs and my resources page of my book, Cut the Crap, Get a Job, and my new job search masterclass is also only $97 a month, and it has everything that my private clients get, all videotaped online.
Oh, that's great.
Including a job search masterclass for veterans as well. So really all kinds of levels of opportunity to master the job search process.
That's awesome. And they can find that out at danamanciagli.com.
Yes.
Great. We'll actually have a link on the CareerQ. So check us out on the CareerQ.com. You'll be able to find out a little bit more about Dana. Listen to this episode. Share this episode with a friend. You care about people that are actually, someone that's in a job search right now. So share this episode out there and pay it forward. So thanks again, Dana. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That was a CareerQ snack. And for more information about our topics, go to thecareerq.com.